the 2 Months Hockey Podcast presented by Go Auto. Thanks to our friends at Go Auto for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking at buying a vehicle, go see ASIM at Hyundai in Spruce Grove. He'll take care of you, and he'll take care of you at any other location as well, too. So thanks to him. We have a very special guest joining us early this morning, Friday morning, and he's been on with us several times before. He's a former head coach, general manager, president, and author. We have Doug MacLean. Mac, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. I'm in Florida and enjoying life. I actually played golf a couple times this week, and everything's pretty good. I've watched some hockey at night. Not a lot, but I've watched some bad games lately, so it's frustrating to watch some of these teams, the way they're talented teams.
Interesting in our podcast group chat, the other guys that jump on with us, our co-hosts that here in Alberta, they were kind of telling me it's been a hard season to get into because teams that you expect to be good aren't good. And it's just like you're kind of just watching a game and it's like, hey, well, this is not what they were expecting. So
I was thinking last night watching the Leafs game, how many times Nick Kypreos talked about Brad Marchand in the offseason as a player that the Leafs could use. And I'm watching what Brad is doing right now with the Panthers, with Barkov out and Kachuk out, and all of a sudden he's become their heart and soul guy. I'm shocked at Brad's. First of all, you marvel at the career he's had basically with his size, but you've always known the determination he's had and the grit and the skill. But I'll tell you what, watching him this year with the Panthers has been a treat. I mean, he's become, and I've heard this from players that have played with him, that he's one of the best leaders around, and one of the best teammates around. But to watch how he's dragging this team into the fight every night is pretty special to watch.
He's not wearing the C, he's not wearing even an A, but it's like he's taking it on as it's his team until these guys come back, and it's like, hey, where do you need me to go then? And also points, sorry.
And the reason I bring it up is I'm watching good teams, or supposedly good teams, as you said, that aren't getting involved, aren't getting into the fight, aren't doing the hard things, like whether it's driving the net or whether it's covering your own zone or your back check or your forecheck or your neutral zone play. They're finding it hard to get engaged, and is it because, the Oilers went to the finals, they're having a hard time getting engaged. I know their goaltending has been the same as it's been for a while, but, Toronto just can't seem to get there. And then I'm looking at their lineup last night and I'm saying, maybe they're just not that good. Maybe they're, I know Taneff's missing and I know Matthews is missing, but I'm telling you what, their puck control, which was always a critical part of their game, the way they controlled the puck coming out of their own zone, through the neutral zone, attacking, it has disappeared. And I know Marner was a big part of that, and nobody wants to admit it, but he was a huge part of that. But there's no flow to these good teams' games right now.
So we were just chatting before we hit record, and obviously I haven't heard Elliot Friedman's podcast yet. I've just read some of the stuff that's been put online, and it sounds like it, and reading what some people are just chopping up and putting online in words, is that there was a team meeting for everyone to go over defense assignments, offensive assignments, and they had this meeting between Monday and before last night's game. And it didn't look like that really did anything. Like, I'm a Leaf fan, and it's very frustrating. But
you got to be careful on video sessions, because I remember the guys telling me in Dallas they used to love Hitchcock's video sessions because they had a beautiful movie theater almost, that they would all go into, and the thing that players loved about it the best was that it was dark. And they would all sleep, and they thought it was the greatest 45 minutes they've ever put in. So maybe it was dark in Toronto, like Hitches, and the guys just
dim lights at
fell
the back.
asleep.
Someone hit
It's not like the coach coming out and, geez, I did a great job of that session, and all of a sudden, not sure many of them really were paying attention about that much, that close. Unless their names are getting called out, like you said. If their names are getting called out,
then they got
they
to
have
answer
to be
to something
reasonably
that's
alert,
happening. But
you know?
a few years back, you were the first one that came on. You came on this podcast, and obviously, I think you even said this on Kipper and Bourne. But you were the first to talk about Brad Treliving becoming the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. How much pressure do you think he's under now? I don't think it was a bad hire at the time, but I think some of the trades haven't worked out the way he probably would like, or the organization, even maybe the players. I'm sure, Brandon Carlo hasn't scored a goal in 97 games. That's dating back to his time in Boston and in Toronto, and that's tough. He was brought in to, be a top four defenseman that can move the puck and be hard defensive, but probably chip in a couple goals as well, too. It's not like he's a Makar, but, not scoring in 97 games is not good. Where are you at with the Leafs and the fact that what you think Keith Pelly, the pressure that maybe that he might be putting on Brad and Craig? Like, do you think both these guys last this year, or where are you at in this situation with them, and what do you think they need to do to get this team going? Because it might have to be them to make a move or something.
I hope it doesn't come to that. I happen to like Brad, and I like Craig. I hope it doesn't come to that. And do I think they're the problem? I think. Look, Brad was caught in Calgary with Tkachuk and Gaudreau. I mean, what do you do when you're a GM in that situation? You do the best you can do to get out of it. And he was in the same identical situation with Marner. Could they have got a deal done with Marner prior to that? I mean, did they set themselves up for this when the deals were actually signed and knowing they were going to expire at a certain time? Really tough situation. Look, I look at their team, and I know Taneff's not in, and I know Matthews wasn't in last night, but Matthews has been there. So one game doesn't make it. They in desperate need of a top six forward, and where do you find one? That's the challenge. That's work that has to be done in the off season, unfortunately. That the Dakota Johnsons and the Roys and all. I mean, they're okay bottom six guys, but when I look, there looks to be a skill drain that's happened to this team. A skill drain. Like Tavares is playing great.
Nice.
Obviously Nylander's Nylander's playing well. Nyes to me has been a bit of a disappointment at times. I mean, I was expecting more, but he's still a kid, so give him a benefit of the doubt. Stolar's covered up a lot for these guys last year, and Wall covered up a ton. And, they've got to hope that Wall comes back and helps both Stolars and him. So I think that's just something. And they need a top 6D. They need a puck mover, or a top 4D, a puck mover. Taneff's out, so it's hard. I mean, he's a big loss. But I think that there's been a bit of a skill drain. And can one guy, make that much difference? Well, now you got a problem in Vegas because Marner wants to pass so much, and you got Eichel who wants to pass, and you got nobody there to shoot, except for the Russian that plays on the wing with them sometimes. So look, it's a tough situation, but they don't look fast, they don't look organized, and I just think we had it for so long that we saw them as this power skill team, and right now they're caught in between of not being a skill team with the way Matthews is playing, and they're not a grinding team. So you got to be careful. I was thinking about the Florida Panthers last night. How everybody talks that they won the cups 3 years in a row to the finals. And everybody says, well, they grind you right to death. But you know who's grinding for them? A bunch of high first-round picks. I mean, think about this. Barkov, Ekholm, Reinhardt, Tkachuk, Bennett, Jones, the kid, the Swedish kid, Lundell, and the young kid that they just drafted in 21 in the first round. That's 8 high first-round picks that are skill guys And I know they didn't draft them all, but they're top high first round picks that are skilled to begin with and playing hard. There's a good combination there. So I just, right now with the Leafs, they're caught here. They're caught between skill and being grinders.
Yeah, I wonder if
it's not a good fit.
I don't know what really happened between Jack Roslovic and the Toronto Maple Leafs in the summertime, and he let Lemieux go. He hired a new agent, and it's like that one I look at is Matthews played with him back in the day in the U.S. It's if that's a guy they would want, but let's move. He's not a driver,
but he's a, to me, he's a hot and cold guy. I mean, I've known him. He's a Columbus kid, and credit to him. He came through our minor hockey program there, and he made the NHL. Credit to him, but he's not not
going to get.
He's not the driver they need. But he's he's a sort of in and out. But look, he's. I watched him last night a bit with Edmonton. I mean, he could have had 3 goals last night. So anyway, they're caught a little bit here, and I'm hoping Berube can get them going. And look, Tavares has carried his weight. Nylander's carried his weight. I talked to a coach yesterday, and they said, "Do you think you're going to win a championship with Nylander as one of your top players?" This was a veteran NHL coach. I happen to really like Nylander, and I think he's a hell of a skilled guy, and I think he's a good player. And I kind of like his attitude, although it's a little laissez-faire sometimes. But I happen to like him. So the number one thing Craig's got to do is he's got to get Matthews going. He's got to get Tanev back, Wall back, Stolar's back, and get his defense pairs together. The McCabe-Tanev is always a good pair. Figure that out and get Matthews going. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case, because that's what they desperately need. They need him to carry. Like I watched McDavid the other night, what he did in that game in Edmonton, how he picked the team up by his bootstraps and got them a win when they needed it. But I haven't seen Matthews do it all year.
He will get there. You would think.
But he will.
You're paying a guy that much money, and he has. He has that pedigree, and
he's that good.
Maybe a few games of reset, and we'll see. Maybe he's back on Saturday night against Chicago, and if he's not, maybe he's back later in the week. But they got a tough stretch here. They've had a favorable schedule. Oilers are in a tough part of their schedule right now, Mac. And let's get to our Edmonton Oilers report, sponsored by our friends at Shatified Salon and Barbershop. They got the 3 locations here in Edmonton. Tell them the 2 Months Podcast sent you, and they'll hook you guys up. With McDavid, obviously great what you talked about there. In my opinion, it's not been the year. This team is not firing the way they've been firing. There's going to be a lot of decisions. Hyman's going to be back tomorrow. What happens there? Is Howard sent down? Is Thomasek sent down? They're going to have to make some kind of roster moves there. I do find it interesting. I was in Calgary earlier this year, and I was talking to a few former Blackhawk players who won the 3 cups with the Blackhawks, and when we were talking about Stan Bowman, they really actually always kind of came back to Dale Talon in terms of what he did. And a lot of it was, if you're talking about Stan, they were like, Dale really did a good job. He signed those contracts. He drafted, he developed, he believed. And I don't know, where the Oilers at in a crossroads here, if that might have been the right hire. I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe it's still too early, but what have you made of what the Oilers and Jeff Jackson, Stan Bowman, and even Chris Knoblauch? There's a clip, I don't know if you saw, I can send it to you, but Knoblauch losing it on this team early in the year, really going at him.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of coaches losing it early in the year. I can't criticize anybody for that. I did it myself a few times and looked like an idiot doing it. But anyway, look, Bowman, here's the difference. And I know, Dale's a friend of mine, and he's done he did a really good job there. Stan won cup, so you certainly not going to criticize him. But here's the job of the general manager today is dramatically different. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, the lottery has become a joke. Okay? The lottery's become a joke. I mean, you got teams going from 14-1 and 11-2, and then, so when you're a bottom team, it's really hard. You think about the Islanders when they were built. When they got Bossy in the draft, and they got Trottier in the draft, and they got Potvin in the draft, and because they were a lousy team and they got the first pick all the time. You saw how Pittsburgh became a team. It was because of the draft, because of Sid, because of Lemieux, because of Letang, because of Fleury. Today you're a bad team, and you can't get better because you got to be unbelievably lucky.
And maybe the Detroit Red Wings are the best example.
Lucky,
right? Yeah.
100%. I mean, 9 years in a row without the playoffs. The Islanders are lousy last year. They're although they were 14th pick and they go to 1. Like, how does that? So the lottery is a big challenge. The cap is another challenge. But the biggest one of all, and this came in 2005 when they put free agency to 27 years of age.
I remember.
And oh man, I mean, how that has changed the GM job. That everybody gets to walk after 7 years pro if you want to, like the Mariners, like the guys we've seen, Rantanen and all these guys. So the job is really different. And I remember talking to Jimmy D when he told me when he got the Detroit job, he said, "Dog, I thought to myself, I got to take this job. I mean, I would have to be an idiot if I can't get the Detroit Red Wings in the playoffs when 16 of 21 teams make the playoffs." Well, today it's 16 of 32 make the playoffs. It's a lot tougher. And Jimmy D was laughing about it with me. He said, imagine, I mean, how 16 of 21, and it was even tough then, and now it's 16 of, and when you don't make the playoffs, it really becomes a major pressure point for GMs, and I lived it. So, it's really a tough job. But if you don't get your work done in the summer, it's really hard to add in season. It is really hard. How do you get a top 6 guy at this time of year? How do you get a goaltender, right? D this time of year? It's really tough. 100% a starting goaltender. That's off-season work that you've got to work at, and when you can't get it done,
so a guy tough. Very well,
it
Kenny
really
Holland.
Is.
He's done, I think he's done an amazing job of coming in, and they're road dogs right now. What are they, 8-1-1 on the road? Another big win last night, bringing some veterans in like Corey Perry, CC Dumoulin. I think it's been a positive experience so far with him taking over as the GM of the Kings. Would you say? What's your thoughts on Kenny Holland?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Kenny. We worked together years ago. We've been good friends, and I mean, he's a hockey lifer. That he's got a great feel on team chemistry. I know, the Oiler thing was for whatever reason it wasn't a good fit. I mean, he wasn't happy there. They weren't happy. Everybody was mad at everybody, but he still took them to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah,
and knowing he didn't have a job at the end of the year. So what's he do? He goes into I picked LA to beat Edmonton last year in the first round because I really liked the way LA was playing last year. And then all of a sudden that didn't happen because, the Oilers played well. But I watched them last night against Toronto. They're a solid team. They play the right way. I'll tell you what, and never underestimate this. And I think it's Toronto is staring this right in the face. You can't. And Florida leadership is unbelievable. And you look at LA and you look no further than Kopitar and Doughty and a few guys, they have got a championship pedigree there from the Darryl Sutter days when they were winning cups and Dean Lombardi. And when, that leadership, I know McDavid is a superstar and Dreisaitl's a superstar, but these guys have won cups and they're leaders. And I look at Toronto. Edmonton's not fair to criticize because they've been to the finals the last 2 years, and when you get to the finals 2 years in a row, you've got a good team. We know what's going on in Edmonton. They've got to get stops, and I feel for Skinner. I really do. But they're giving up. I mean, last night. The kid in goal had no chance. The chances they're giving up.
Yeah.
Too many quality chances. So, I'm rambling on here, but I just, I feel for these, they're good teams and they'll get it together. I think Knobloch's a good coach.
Yeah.
I happen to like Jackson and Stan. I hope they figure it out, and I think they will. I think they're too good. Bouchard's got to, these guys have got to find their game. That's all. And when they do, they'll be better. I worry a little more about the Leafs
Correct.
because I don't think they're as skilled.
And I agree.
I really
agree
don't.
There. We'll get you out on this one. Nick Kypreos, a friend of yours, had a great kind of conversation yesterday, rant about, there was a tweet made about, maybe possibly the Leafs looking at Rasmus Andersson. I know there was a rumor of that last year. I think he broke it down in a good way, and I think you're doing his show today. You usually do their show on Fridays, but what do you think that's a good fit, or like where are you at with the Calgary Flames and what they need to do and how they need to go forward? Just get your final thoughts on the Flames and on that.
Well, obviously they're in a rebuild, and I think they got a little ahead of themselves, thinking they were going to be good this year. I never had them being good. I mean, the kid last year stood in his head. I watched some of the game last night. He made some unbelievable saves again last night to get them a big win. I think they're a ways away. I think, they've got to move this guy if they can and get, they're going to be patient with Craig. They've got an opportunity to rebuild. They should take advantage of that. And there's lots of teams that could use Anderson.
And I think, I
for
think
sure,
made a good point. He said you got to run 30 games with him and then get that bidding war up with Rasmus Andersson.
Yeah, 100%. But here's the other problem for the Leafs. Mitten's gone. Cowan's left. I mean, who are they going to trade? What the draft picks aren't there. Like, what assets are they going to move to get a top 4D?
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Not like, and I don't know where the situation, why the situation was what it was with David Kampf, but not saying he's a needle mover, but a 30-year-old player who has good pedigree of winning faceoffs and could be a good penalty player. Something
went wrong there, and I'm not sure what. I've heard rumblings that something didn't go right there, and I'm really wondering what the truth is on that situation.
Well, Mac, enjoy the rest of the weekend here. Obviously, great time being in Florida for you, and all the best to you and Jill. And I appreciate you always jumping on with us to do a quick pod of running around the league in Western Canada.
Nope.
You too.
No problem, bud. All the best.
Okay, we'll chat.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, man. Yeah.